And this evening, we're delighted to welcome Sam Dalling from True Faith, the Newcastle United podcast, who's going to give us a lowdown on Newcastle's pre-season and look ahead to the game at St James's Park at the weekend. Sam, thank you very much for joining us. How has pre-season been for you guys?
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here. I have to say, if you want a real lowdown on pre-season, I'm probably not your man because I tend to ignore friendlies. I actually went to one on Friday night, though, so you're lucky. I happened to be working at Durham in the day and the cricket finished on time. So we are now Cellar Cup champions. We have won our own tournament 2 years in a row, so a little bit of silverware for the cabinets. Look, the lads, they were out in Japan, one of those tours that the manager has no interest in whatsoever, but commercially it's viable. And we had a post-season trip, do you remember, to Australia. The players...
That was absolutely ridiculous, that.
So footballers, and Alfie will know this, it is not uncommon from the last day of the season a footballer to walk out of the changing room with a suitcase because most of them go straight to an airport and go somewhere on holiday. Newcastle did that. They just happened to leave Brentford's community stadium, go to Heathrow and get on a long-haul flight to Australia to play Spurs. I mean, money talks. But results aside, I think pre-season has been decent. Usually you look at the game the Saturday before the first league game and you can think, oh, that's pretty much the team. Problem is, because we played Friday and Saturday night, I've not got that much idea, really.
Be interested to see how you set up at the weekend. Do you feel that Eddie Howe is under a little bit of pressure this season, Sam?
It's interesting. There'll be noise, right? And this is good for Eddie Howe. Maresca and Ten Hag and Arne Slot at Liverpool, right? They will suck in all the noise. But internally, I think he's under massive pressure, actually. And in a good way, he should be under pressure. He has had not quite free rides, but, you remember he came in, kept us up when we looked like we were gone. Then we had that amazing season when we finished in the Champions League. No one expected that ahead of plan. And last year, because of then having had that success and being a stretch squad, and I don't want to stand here and moan about or sit here and moan about injuries. We did have an awful lot of them. So the fact we dropped away last year was actually he wasn't under that much pressure. But this year we haven't got any European football. Thanks very much to Manchester United for somehow winning the FA Cup. Although, as I'm about to have my first baby, my wife is delighted that I won't be going Thursday night trips to here, there, and everywhere. But if you look at our fixture list, there's no easy games, but we actually don't play anyone else who you'd think would be competing for the Champions League away from home, other than Chelsea until Boxing Day. So if he doesn't start the season very well, like Champions League is a minimum expectation, and I think we should probably be way, way up there in the first half of the season. We may well drop off, but yeah, he's under pressure. It's a long answer to your quite short question.
Is the defence kind of a worry? I mean, obviously you've been linked with Mark Gehi like the last week or so, which I think would be a cracking signing if you can prize him out of Crystal Palace. But given that, I mean, Eddie Howe's record in the Premier League, I think he's managed eight seasons in the Premier League, and 7 of them his team's conceded 60+ goals. Is that a concern, or is it just a case of last season was such a freak with the injury situation that it's kind of been allowed to slide and just mark it off as a freak and we go again?
It is a worry. The Mark Gehi one, it'd be a fantastic signing. I don't understand it. We went into a Champions League campaign with Jamal Lascelles and Fabien Cher, and now are suddenly having talked about having no money, having to sell a couple of young players on PSR deadline day, are suddenly going to buy basically England's breakout centre-back from the Euros. Like, it makes no sense. I would love it. The defence is the one area I'm not quite sure who's going to line up. There's questions over. I don't think Trippier will be first choice. I think Livramento, man, you know quite well, who was brilliant last year. Lewis Hall came and he has all the. It's not his fault. He's got this massive price tag, but people expected him to be a first team player straight away. He wasn't. Howe didn't trust him defensively, but he started to play back end of next year. But it's definitely an area we need to strengthen. He loves Dan Burn. He's brought Lloyd Kelly in to play that third centre-back / left-back role. I think but I just don't think he'll move away from Burn. Botman's not back. Pope was massive last year. We missed Nick Pope, right? He was out, dislocated his shoulder, freak injury. And it wasn't that Martin Dubravka had many that he should have saved, but there were a good number of goals that Nick Pope would have saved. He's that good a shot stopper. And we missed the cover. Joe Linton barely played last year, and there's very few players that can do what he can do, unless you're looking at spending.
That's been a renaissance and a half, hasn't it? Given his stature 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, it was accidental. Kieran Clark got sent off early on for a stupid foul in a game at home to Norwich that we ended up hanging on to a 1-1 draw. And that's why Joe Linton had to move back. And it's been, like, honestly, the player is funny now looking back at it. He is quite something. You can't get the ball off him. Like, physically, he just shrugs off anyone who dares come near him. And the understanding he has through this friendship, basically, with Bruno Guimaraes, they were best men at each other's weddings. We missed him hugely. And if you look at the 2 seasons, right, the season we finished 4th, we won 19 games. Was it 4th or 3rd? I can't remember. We won 19 games. Last season, we won 18 games. The difference was the draws. We just kept getting beat. Away from home last year, we kept getting beat. We didn't have that solidity to hang on to games. So that's what we need to find again.
Is there any areas that you feel that you still need to strengthen? Is there weaknesses in the squad? Yeah,
right winger. There was a few. Right winger. We're still ploughing on. As much as I love Miguel Almiron, he smiles a lot. You can't not like him. He had that one purple patch where he scored 12 goals, I think, in about this many games. It's him or Jacob Murphy at the moment, and they've been talking about a right winger, and neither of those are up to the level that I think Newcastle and certainly the owners want to be. The defensive position would be solved by Mark Gay coming in. We'd all love a proper left back, but I don't think, having spent the money Hall is on Hall, they will do that. He is one for now and for the future. And the talk has been for a while about a backup striker to Alexander Isak, but it's so difficult because you're looking at it. No one we're going to buy is ever going to put Alexander Isak out of the side. He is going to be a proper superstar. He probably won't be with us that much longer, particularly if he shines this season, which I think he will. Callum Wilson, when he's fit, is a blooming good centre forward. Problem is,
he's never fit.
He looks at a weight machine and he gets injured, like any kind of injury imaginable. But then if you're a third choice, what are you going to come in as? Like, you're going to spend money on that kind of player if you can't shift Wilson, which we haven't been able to. We signed that young lad William Asula for 10 million from Sheffield United. I've seen a little bit of him because I do work as a journalist, but I don't know that much around him. So there's weak areas, but it's actually, there's not many places where we need a guaranteed first team player, and that makes it quite difficult to attract people, depth, I would imagine.
It's depth, and you don't want to be signing players that are happy to be second choice, right. Because then you fall into the trap that we did. I mean, God, when we got relegated, not last year, the time before, where we basically bought squad fillers, and most of them just didn't give a toss.
Yeah, but I look at the depth in Newcastle's squad. I mean, just off the top of my head, really, Trippier, Botman, Barnes, Wilson, Tonali to come back, maybe Willock, Kelly. That's a lot of good players who would, every single one of those I've just mentioned, Kraft, Dubravka, every single one of those would improve Saints squad. So it's not like the worst situation in the world that Newcastle find them in. But yeah, the right wing, I can see that as being an area where you don't really have anyone. Does Harvey Barnes play the other side? He's left-sided.
No, he's left-sided. He was, he just stood awkwardly at Sheffield United and broke his foot, and that was the last we saw of him. He's been probably told by the club's media team to come out and say he's looking for a Gordon-like season this year. I mean, he could be brilliant. Howe's reluctant to move Gordon from left to right, I think. I'll call you up on that. Martin Dubravka would not improve your team. I promise you that, again, as much as I like him. But he played on Saturday. He played on Saturday. I mean, I was there. I witnessed on Friday night John Ruddy play for Newcastle United, which I think he's going to turn into a bit of a cult figure. Like,
when did that happen?
In the summer, picked him up,
Jesus.
Having been relegated by. There's a thing now, isn't there? They like
Well, it's the third choice, the aging pro
Carson.
who's happy to be
It's
third
not
choice and just take corners in the warm up.
It's not even that. We've got 5. I read a piece about it. Clubs like a big goalkeeping pool because you need goalkeepers to play in the games, the training games, while the actual goalkeepers are off doing their proper work. That's why Tom Heaton went out with the England squad to the Euros.
I was going to say that.
You need 5 goalkeepers. It's a weird situation. So we've got Mark Gillespie, who will never play for Newcastle United, but I mean, fair play to him. Apparently, he's a very good social secretary. He sorts out all the stuff like that. But yeah, there's a few. I mean, it does feel a little bit stronger. Midfield, we're very strong because Tonali, like, what can you do? Like, there's no way. Well, some people say we should have known about it. I don't think you can know about that. So in midfield, we're pretty strong. It was sad to see Anderson go. They didn't want him to go really, but they had to sort the books out. But we signed the Vlachodimos from Forest, a goalkeeper. Dubravka's still there. Signed Ruddy. Got this Gillespie lad. So yeah, there is depth. But then at the same time, had we got into Europe, Matt Ritchie and Paul Dummett would have been offered new deals to ensure that we filled the quotas. So it's like, and neither of them. Ritchie's just been picked up by Portsmouth. Dummett hasn't got a club yet. So it just shows you that it's still a transitional period.
I mean, Ryan Fraser might have been getting a game at that point.
I would love to see Ryan Fraser get a game. He would be our best right winger. He'd be my first choice right winger. He had a really good end to a season and then pulled his hamstring right at the back end of it. He and Eddie Howe do not like each other. I think there was a lot of leaks about team news and various things season before last, and the general consensus was Ryan Fraser. He's not allowed in the building. He's not allowed near.
He played no games at all. No games at all.
No, he's not allowed to train with them. He's not. Wow. Him and Howe. He won't. He would. Genuinely, I'm not taking them, Mick. He would be our best right winger, but him and Howe, it's not happening. So Jamal Lewis, who couldn't get a game for Watford last year, he's played at left back in pre-season, but Ryan Fraser, not even in the training.
Be interesting to see what happens with Ryan Fraser. He was brilliant down here for us. He gave 110% when he played. Didn't always start, but I was impressed with him. I hope that we go and bring him in, but there's a lot of talk that he needs a settlement from Newcastle before he exits his contract. So we'll wait and see what happens. You spoke about Champions League being the target. Do you feel it's realistic, Sam?
Yeah, and it's going to sound like arrogant, and people might not like it, but there is depth there, and Spurs have got Europe, and they are chaotic as well. Like, the Spurs came up to Newcastle twice actually and got ripped apart because they didn't know how to play. Howe is a training ground manager. He loves a Monday to Friday to work out a game plan. He didn't have that last year. He does have that this year. And we're a momentum side, a bit like you last year, actually. We can go on these runs where we will win 8 or 9 games in a row. And if we play the big sides in the middle of those, we'd back ourselves to beat them. We can also, last year, we had some terrible runs where we looked absolutely naff and completely on empty. We had a week where we were down to the bare bones, but in 7 days, we beat Arsenal and Manchester United at home and had that PSG game. I don't know if you might remember it, where we were 1-up until they got a penalty that wouldn't have been given in England.
A laughable penalty that was.
It was. But the following week, we then went to Everton and lost 3-0 on the Thursday and 4-1 or something at Spurs, 5-1 on the Sunday because we were just on empty. So, as I said, the fixture list is relatively kind. And much could go wrong. But yes, at the start of the season, there's plenty of optimism. There's plenty of players that if they stay fit, they are capable as being as good a side as any outside Manchester City and Arsenal. And I'm not saying they will, but in that cluster, there is no reason with a fair wind why Newcastle cannot finish the best of the rest. But there's also no reason why there's 6 or 7 other clubs that can't do that. But Villa have got, Villa are great, but they've got 8 European games minimum.
Villa will finish 8th this season. I think they'll struggle with the extra games.
It will be that little bit harder for them. Sam, it's been a pleasure having you on the Total Saints podcast today. But before you go, it's our time to do our predictions for the weekend's fixture. So I'm going to get a prediction off all you guys, if that's okay. As the guest, Sam, I'm going to go with you first. Can I get a score prediction from yourself for the weekend's game?
Yes, you can. I am going to make myself very unpopular and say Newcastle United 3, Southampton 0.
Alfie, how about you?
Alfie needs to unmute
muted.
himself.
Sorry about that. Just so surprised.
Schoolboy error.
I was going to say, you're not going to be that
Come to you
unpopular,
first.
Sam, because I'm also going for a 3-0 win for Newcastle. But I would like to preface it by saying that I don't think this spells doom for Southampton. I think Newcastle are just in a completely different stratosphere for this game. And it's at St James's Park. It's the first game of the season. It's going to be electric. They've got so many good players. So it's going to be the 4 or 5 games after this where, the real litmus test for Saints. But yeah, I think a 3-0 win for Newcastle, and then maybe an Alexander Isak hat-trick for my captain of my fantasy team as well, potentially.
Glenn, what's your score prediction?
I just hope that the game itself, we go up there and put on some sort of performance. You can get beat 3-0 and it be game over after 47 minutes or whatever, and then the rest of the game is just players walking around and it'd be rubbish. Or you can actually cause Newcastle a few problems. So I hope we can go and do that. I'm not terribly optimistic that we're going to get anything concrete out of this game. So I will go for a slightly more optimistic 2-0 defeat.
And how about you, Steve?
Well, I'm going to be the most optimistic out of all of us and think that we'll actually score. But yeah, defensively, I just don't see us being able to cope over the full 90 minutes with the combination of Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, assuming
Jacob Murphy as well, 6 goals in pre-season.
Jacob Murphy, great. Hopefully he gets sent off and we can wave him off. Just to kind of.
I forgot about that. Yes,
just to kind of square that circle and just end it all. Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, as Glenn said, you go up there hoping that you can put a performance in. If you manage to get a result, great, absolute bonus. But those aren't the games that are going to decide our fate this season. So yeah, just a performance, create some chances, give the travelling fans something to shout about. But ultimately, I think they'll probably be too good for us. 3-1.
Yeah, time for my prediction. Unfortunately, I don't think we're getting anything out of it. I don't think we're quite ready to play a Newcastle side right now. I think it's a really tough opening game. We got beaten 4-1 by Tottenham in the first game last time round in the Premier League under Hasenhüttl at the time. I'm going to go with a 4-1 actually. I think we will score Adam Armstrong to set his season up. I think he'll do okay this season, but I think it's a real tough one for us. Sam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Total Saints podcast today. Thank you very much for joining us. Good luck for the rest of the season. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you later on in the season when you head down south to St Mary's.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Good luck after Saturday and up until we come down to St Mary's.